ice age. How many of you have heard that there was an ice age? Saw the movie. Did you see the second one? It was really good. Yes, it was millions and millions of years ago. And so the secularists say. But we're going to see tonight a scientific model. But let's just review. We have some new folks in here. Let's just review a little bit what we talked about in the beginning. Why are we having this apologetics class? So we can prove that we're right and they're wrong. To defend our faith and therefore to bring others into our faith. That's right. And so that's what we're doing this for. But it's good to know, for you and I to know, for you and for me to know that God's word is true. It is inerrant. It is all truth, even Matthew. Even Matthew. Shep and I have a thing going. Well, anyway, so we talked about Genesis 1:1, talked a little bit about the gap theories, if you remember, where there was God in the beginning, God created, but then there were these millions and billions of years, and then God started doing the other things. And then we know that the day-long theory, which is when God created the first day, was really billions of years, and the second day was billions of years. But the Bible says that it was a 24-hour period. That's the definition of the Hebrew word there. So we have looked at all these things. We've looked at a little bit about the young earth, old earth. We're going to do that more later. But we've sort of talked about that. We've talked about evolution and animals going from goo to you, right? We saw the little play with the leading atheist of today, which is a man named Richard Dawkins. And he was interviewed by a creation scientist, and they asked him, give us one proven example of true evolution. Evolution, by definition, is going from A to B, from X to Y. It's not variation in a species. It's not survival of the fittest. It's once was one thing, and now it's another thing. Show us one example in all the fossils we have. And he could not show one proof of evolution. Why not? Because it's false. That's right. God created us in the image of himself, right? This isn't up yet, but that's okay. Just when I'm not ready. Well, I'm still reviewing. All right. Then we've talked about the flood. We talked about Noah's Ark. We talked about the true possibilities of 8 human beings taking care of roughly probably 1,600 animals on this ark. And we talked about how we got all those animals in there. We probably took in younger animals. Were there dinosaurs on the ark? Yes. When were dinosaurs created? Trick question. 6th day, when the land animals were created. That's right. I don't know why we have the fascination that we do, partly because they're extinct now. We're going to look a little bit at the woolly mammoth tonight. We're going to talk about the saber-toothed tigers. We're going to talk about some fun things tonight. But anyway, so Noah and his family, we talked over the last couple of weeks how they built the ark, how they handled a year in that ark. And it was not comfortable, probably, not what you would, choose as a year-long vacation. But it was doable in order to save all of the species that God had created, okay? Any questions on what we've talked about thus far? Yes, ma'am.
So what about all the seafaring animals?
They were not. The judgment was on all the land.
So everything in the sea was fine.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, that's what Drew asked me, Martin, upstairs when I was doing this for them. And I'm like, don't have time to answer that. I'll get back with you next week. And I had to go look that up. But really, the curse was on the land animals and the land people. And there was a lot of evil going on. I do have to reiterate not to really go to the Noah movie. It is making Noah an environmentalist. And he's going to have survival grief or regret that he and his family and all this mess. It's really not a good way to spend your money. There's some great things online at Answers in Genesis, AIG.com. They've got a 2 DVD kit for $20 that you and your family can watch, and it's much more realistic. I'm not saying it's a movie per se. All right, so that's what happened. The land animals were cursed. Good question. Any other questions on the stuff we've done in the past? How we got the races? Where did Cain get his wife? Come on. It was his sister. Why was that okay back then? Right, but the gene pool was not, each generation, what did we talk about when we were talking about the evolution? Each generation down is half the information than the generation before it, right? So you and your spouse came together, you have all your genes, she or he has all their genes, and your kids have the same number of genes, but only half the information, half from mom, half from dad. And then their kids will have the same and so forth. So really, when we try to show things, evolution is exactly the opposite. We lose information. We don't gain information through evolution. And that's what they say, that chemistry, that matter created intelligence and life. A block of dirt created life. So it's ridiculous. Now there's two models, and that's what we're going to talk about even in the Ice Age tonight. There's a biblical that we have much more proof on our side than what they have on their model for evolution and the millions of years or billions of years. Any other questions? All right. You did it. You did it.
No, it's not mirrored like you had last week.
But it's down here instead on that. That's what I wanted.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a blessing. Hey, 24 years of marriage, I can throw him a kiss. You know, new people come visit church, and I kind of kiss them after the service right up here. Anyway, I hope everybody understands here. I am married to the man. So, all right, here comes the Ice Age. What produced the Ice Age? The flood. That's what we're going to look at. That's the model we're looking at tonight. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, exact dates. Don't you love that? I love that. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, all that hot water coming up from the earth, underneath the earth. And the floodgates of heaven were open, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. All right. So now we've got all this water. Noah floated around for 5 months before the ark settled on Mount Ararat. And then it sat there for another 7. It was 12 months, okay, until he could walk into the new earth. So when you ask a secularist, hey, why is there ever an ice age? They have no idea. They cannot scientifically manufacture anything as to why an ice age would come. They can't reproduce one, although we did have a little one, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And we've talked about it. Where will it be? Well, anyway, we'll get that in a minute. All right, secularists don't know why. And now they said it for a long time. They said there were like 4 ice ages. Then they said, nope, there were 30. They're digging down deep into the bedrock of the oceans, and they're coming out with these things. And rocks can show shavings where glaciers have come off of them. You can find that in many places, the northern part of the northern hemisphere. Now, the Ice Age didn't cover the whole earth, right? It just basically the top third, and we're going to look up that here in just a minute. But the Bible does not say either, and then there was an ice age on the 4th month and the 3rd day of, doesn't say that. So we don't have any set things, but we have indications. We have things that show us, hey, that might have been why there was an ice age. Secularists, I said here, all right, the proofs in the ice age, though, are in the Bible. All right, so the different models. This one gentleman that I was listening to, he used to be a meteorologist, and he said, I got so tired of messing up people's days. And what did we just have with the whole snow thing recently, right? They just really mess things up bad. And they don't, theirs is a practice like medical doctors, right? Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And the man said, you know, if I can't even tell you what tomorrow's weather is going to be. How can I possibly tell you what billions of years ago or millions of years? And he was a Christian, though. He started studying. So he's given his life over to creation science and the rock formation and things like that. Anyway, he lives by 1 Thessalonians 5:21, saying, examine everything carefully, everything in God's created world. Examine that carefully. Hold fast to everything that is good. If evolution cannot show you one simple step, that this grew legs or that became from a plant to a fish to nothing, examine that. And don't hold fast to that if it's not secure, if it's not good. All right, we all agree there was a recent ice age. But the seculars say there's going to be another one. But as a Christian, we know there won't be, because we understand that the ice age was caused by the flood, right? And those are the rock slides and slices all over the world about that. Now here's a little, whoops, wrong one. This is kind of where the ice age was. And you see it's really in the northern part. You've got Canada over here on us. It got down below the Great Lakes. It did cover the Great Lakes. But it didn't go much further than that. So now note over there in Europe, southern Europe, it's not there. But if there's an ice age and it's frozen up top, is it going to be like burning hot down there? It's going to be cooler, right? And we're going to look at why it was cooler here in just a minute. So that kind of gives you a chance. This is a different model. The black is not, it didn't really come out as good as I thought it would. That's better up there. Okay. So the black is not, and then anyway, the other one was better. Okay. The biblical flood does fulfill the requirements for our ice age. All right, now remember, when the waters of the deep are exploding up, and this is one of the scenes you see about that Noah movie, and that's kind of why I wanted to go see it, was to see all the, special effects of that kind of thing, but I don't want to give them my money. So the volcanoes are erupting, earthquakes are happening, all that molten lava is coming up from below the surface of the earth, right? And what happens is that volcanic dust makes a barrier between the sun and the earth. And so the heat can't get down, and the ice gets colder and colder, ice more and more. It can't get back up, okay? So you've got this false ceiling of a volcanic ash that's lasting for a very long period of time. The fountains of the deep, out of the oceans, the water came back down in the oceans. Now, what is that boiling water going to do to the water in the ocean? You pour boiling water into regular water, what's going to happen to the regular water? It's going to get warmer, right? So the fountains of the deep, the oceans, in other words, made the oceans from top to bottom warmer, all the way down, and it did it from pole to pole. All the water got warmer and warmer. And meanwhile, that volcanic ash is staying up there pretty much over the land masses, more reaction of the cold, which is where you get a lot of the ice. And the ice age lasted about 700 years. From what we can tell in the scriptures, it happened sometime after 100, 200 years, 150 years after the whole Tower of Babel event, okay, which we've talked about, the dispersion of the people. So sometime after that, because they're still getting adjusted to this new world, the waters are still very warm, the animals are having to react, okay, they don't like certain temperatures, so they're reacting. A lot of different things are going on at this time. Now, the secularists are trying to make the fact that the mountains had glaciers on them. But there's no proof of that. There's no rock formation on that. We're going to look at some rock formations. Maybe not. I don't remember if I got that in here or not. I don't think I did. Donnie, help me remember that I need to put a rock glacier thing. A glaciated rock. That sounds so. Now, let me just tell you, this stuff is really, really intricate and very hard to. I'm trying to just give it in a way that it's not a science lesson. But, I mean, it's hard, okay? So we've got, even in Siberia, during the Ice Age, there were lots of animals living there. Now, get this. We know the temperatures were much cooler, but there is proof. A secular scientist has discovered a basin that used to be a beautiful freshwater lake. You know that about the Siberia? You're nodding your head. I thought maybe you knew. In Siberia, I think it was about 131 feet down from the sand. That's interesting. Oh, here they are. Down from the sand is this basin, and it's green. It's got vegetation, fossilized vegetation around it in Siberia. And this gentleman believes it was once a very plush, green, reeds growing with giraffes and saber-toothed tigers and all those things. He finds fossils of freshwater snails all in that basin. So we know it was freshwater. And where'd that come from? You know, the rain. That's right. That's right. So moving on, we said that the seculars kept thinking, oh, there's another one coming. Maybe some of you saw all this in the news maybe 10, 15 years ago. Maybe that long ago. They're like, oh, we're on the verge of another ice age. Get ready. We're going to all have another ice age. And then it didn't happen. And they're like, oops, well, maybe, it's not going to happen yet. And they can't figure out why. But see, now go back. They can't tell us why we had the first one. Scientifically, they can't. Now, they've contrived things, and it still failed. So you can see how desperate they are to try to make, beat to fit and paint to match. They're trying to make this work for millions of years, and that it happens every so many millions of years, but it can't. So you and I, as biblical purists, we know that there's not going to be another one because we can understand how the results of the flood caused it, and that beautiful rainbow covenant that God gave us. He said He was not going to do another flood. Ergo, we're not going to have another ice age, so we don't have to worry about that. There some of the way the animals would look. There's the cow. That's a little a dog of sorts. There now, Got to understand they don't have a living one, so this is about all I could find. But I did find some good saber-toothed fossils here. So you can see the teeth in the one and then the whole body over there. They were pretty good-sized varmints there. So this is what we're finding, and we're going to talk about where we're finding some of these things. But I may be going a little bit beyond what I want to do first. Let's go. Let me go on through here. So this is just obviously a replica of what a woolly mammoth might look like from what we can find in those beautiful long tusks. Now remember what's happening. This is an actual woolly mammoth fossil. Now remember when the water is turning into ice, where is the water coming from to turn into ice? Not a trick question. That's right. These waters that are now in the ocean that are cooling, okay, they don't evaporate as much because of the volcanic ash, and they're getting cooler and cooler. The sun's not coming through, so the salt water is freezing into these glaciers. So some of what you and I know today as oceans were actually dry beds. They have found fossils in that basin. What is it, the Bering? What's not the Bering? Right there between Alaska and Russia. Is it Bering Strait? It is the Bering Strait. It just seemed too easy. So where people actually would hunt the woolly mammoth and killed them there. So it was dry during the Ice Age up there. A lot of places were dried out. There's another path between South, I guess Africa, and Australia. Nice, beautiful ridge where people walked, kind of didn't live permanently, but they had camps and they stayed some. So it proves that it was dry. But then when it melted again and the Ice Age went away, then the waters filled back up. Does that make sense? So you've got the evaporation going, not working real well with all that ash. But as the ash finally does start leaving the air coming down, then the sun is able to come through. The waters are warming up and melting all that ice. And then for the grounds are warming up because the sun is coming down better. So the animals are going to start moving to different places to the comfort of what they're built to enjoy. Does that make sense?
I do have a question. It's the timeline for that.
Mm-hmm.
So the flood
Mm-hmm.
lasted a year, the water receded, they landed. And then when did the ice?
Okay, good question. What we learned, yeah. Right, there was 8 of them. God told them when they came off the boat, same thing he told Adam and Eve. Go out in all the earth. Oh, wait, actually he said go out in all the earth and replenish. Well, they didn't. They just stayed right there. And you've got all these peoples, and so they're getting together, getting away from God. Now, you remember, the reason God used Noah, why? Because he was what? He's a godly man. Everybody else got killed. He's the only guy that was righteous. And so God spared him and his family, his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives. That was it. Okay, as soon as he gets off the boat, what happens? He builds a vineyard, gets drunk. So, he's a righteous man, but we all fall short, okay? And I'm not condemning the man. He did a great thing, and I'm quite glad he did. Or we wouldn't be here tonight. So that's what I'm getting to. So they're staying in the one area. They're building a tower because they think they can come up to God. And God's like, So he dispersed them by their languages. So when they got their different languages, they started going out in their language groups. Now, what does that do to the gene pool? First, you've got everybody in one pool. You can marry somebody. You got all this genetic information. But now you're just limited to the people that's speaking your language. Then you've cut the amount of DNA information down dramatically. And so, therefore, they dispersed out. And that happened it was about 100 years after the flood, okay? And then after that, somewhere between 50 and another 100 years, we're not sure, is when the Ice Age began with the evaporation and everything that we've been talking about. Other questions, comments? I thought somebody else said they were going to say something. All right, the waters were warm, so they're trying to evaporate quickly, right? Warm water evaporates quicker than cold water. That's obvious. But it couldn't go anywhere, so it built up in the cool atmosphere because it couldn't get above the ash to get to the sun, so it gets cold, and it comes down as snow and ice, ergo an ice age. Okay? We good? Trying to make it simpler than it is. Believe me. So, all right. So we got snow, ice all over Greenland, Antarctica, North and Central England, Denmark, Poland, Germany, Russia, Canada, and down into the United States as far as Missouri, is what they're saying. All right, so we look at the animals of the Ice Age. The woolly mammoth, he's a cousin to the elephant, that's right. Kind of can see that, roll tide. Sorry, Vito. Sorry, man, I had to say it. And then there you go. Wow, what was it? Go who? Go LSU. Clemson Tigers. Just kidding. So we got these animals, and they're finding them in all over. They've recently found 30 feet down a construction company in Seattle found a huge tusk of a woolly mammoth. They're all over the place, different things. So the woolly mammoth, though, went to Siberia, had a green grass, flowers, had that beautiful lake there, warm waters coming off the Arctic. You could swim in the Arctic Ocean during, that time before the Ice Age. So then you have the saber-toothed tiger. No, that's this way. There's your one in Seattle. He was like a huge cave lion is what they're about 10 feet long, big things. They are larger breed than, Miss Berto, so the kids are occupied, larger than any other. The tigers we have today, the woolly mammoths, bigger than any elephants that we have today. So those are found in places that they wouldn't be recognized, like in Europe. You go to Europe, it's basically cool, much cooler than Alabama. And we have many fossils of them in southern England, or Europe, excuse me. And that is because of that warming before the Ice Age. Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of. All right, here's the woolly mammoth fossil found in southern England. They would not expect to find that in a cooler region like that, but there he is. They also, now this is what you'll see all over the world. These are what they call glaciated rocks. In other words, the glaciers have come off of these down. They look like they're mountains, but they're not. They're rocks. Some of them may be mountains up further north. I didn't write down where this picture was. But these are literally, all over up the first top third of, do what, Lynn?
Glacial till, the pebble-looking layer there is the rock, the small rocks that the glacier rolls over, and it's pushed them up and ground them down.
My geologist.
The berms at where the glacier advanced the furthest, the dikes kind of.
Right.
That kind of stuff. It's all over the Midwest
Mm-hmm.
and Ohio, even down into New Jersey.
Yeah, a little bit into New Jersey. Ohio also, you're right. That is very true. All right, this is actually a little town. Myra is the name of it, and it was encapsulated by the glacier ice sheets. And after, during the flood, and then there it is now. Pretty cool. It's, I looked it up in the map where it was. I forgot where it was now. I've slept since I did that. All right, so here you see kind of a picture as it starts to get warmer, what happens to the glaciers. Okay, right, they start breaking down, they turn more into water, so the waters of the ocean are getting deeper again, and that dry basin in the Bering Strait between Africa and Australia is filling up, things like that. All right? All right, now and this again is our modern day example of a lot of different things. We've used Mount St. Helens for some of you that haven't been here. They've taken rocks and compared them to, with secular scientists, other rocks, and they'll tell us that those rocks are billions of years old based on carbon dating, based on, the layers of the rock. But we know this happened, May 25th. I've got it written here, one of them. May 25th of, nope, that was something, of what year? Yeah, it was 1980, and the May 25th is a different thing. So Mount St. Helens started to erupt, and guess what that did? Look what's going up in the sky. Lots and lots of ash. Now, my cousin that you know, Sandy Baker, lives in Spokane. And she remembers this quite vividly. She was in Portland, I think. No, I guess she was already in Spokane at the time. And that ash went everywhere. And it stayed in the sky forever. This is just one volcano. And it cooled things. And it messed things up because the sun couldn't go down. The air, couldn't go up. So it was much cooler for an extended period of time from one little eruption of a volcano. You can see some of the mess here, the car that's covered completely with ash. That used to be on your right, forestry, and that you saw, I didn't show you the picture of that. And then the other one on the bottom left is actually a bridge that has been wiped out down a little bit further. That's as close as the picture could get by the lava, molten lava coming down. So we also know that in Mount St. Helens that the proving that the carbon dating is wrong. We also know now that it changes the climate. And so if you could imagine volcanoes erupting all over the globe, what that would have done, and that would have produced a massive ice age. Questions? Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so. Very much so.
That stayed up for like 100 years?
No, it hasn't been that long. Probably. Well, the Ice Age lasted 700 years. So I believe secularists and creationists both agree on the duration. I have to check on that, but I haven't seen a discrepancy on that. So it didn't stay that long, but it did stay for a long time for it to build up.
Just get it started.
Well, probably to produce it pretty much to its peak. And then it started falling, and therefore the sun started coming down. But then it took another long period of time for all that frozen ice to melt back down and fill the oceans again. So the whole process, the building up and coming down, was 700 years. Yeah. So, we cannot imagine the catastrophic damage that flood did to this planet. We weren't there. We just don't get it. And we're trying to understand more and more. But, we can see, looking at this model and looking at Mount St. Helens, that's what happened. So we know this was ABC News, secular news, telling that the Sahara Desert was once a huge lake of fresh water. And it was about 131 feet below the sand that the basin edge was found. It had green vegetation all around it, fossilized. The snail fossils were there. They believed that there were all kinds of warm temperature animals there, but they could stay there because there was water. But then after everything happened, then it became, now it's a desert that I think some beetles, there's like one kind of beetle that can live there, and that's it. All right, that's what I've got for tonight. We're finishing early. I just figured we'd go slower, but y'all have listened intently or whatever, so.
Did you already go what she said on the plates with the shifting?
The tectonic plates moved. That happened during the flood, all that pressure of the water on the globe, okay? So anybody can look at the globe and see, that there's kind of a pattern going there, where maybe it was like, and so most people, even secularists, believe that it was one landmass and that the temperature was tepid all the time. There weren't extreme temperatures. Now, remember last week I showed you pictures, and there they found it was a plum tree, 9 feet tall, frozen up in the Arctic, inside the Arctic Circle, well into the Arctic Circle. The fruit was fresh frozen. It was still good. And they found that up there. So there was obviously vegetation up there before the flood and before all the chaos happened with the temperatures and the extreme hots and colds. So the tectonic plates, to get back there, during that time of all that water, yes, they did start breaking apart. And that was the earthquakes and the volcanoes coming up is breaking things apart. And that's where you get the breaking away of what we now have continents and the tectonic plates underneath. The mass. Could you get me one too, please? So that's a good question. Good questions.
Some of the woolly mammoths have been found with flowers in their mouth. It was still, in the permafrost.
Mm-hmm.
They frozen so quickly frozen that they still have flowers, amazing flowers.
From eating and stuff.
The woolly mammoths, they feed them to pheasants and so forth.
Is that right? Thank you.
Something recently on the baby woolly mammoth they found in Siberia.
Mm-mm.
Russian museums. And it's still, the flesh is flesh. It's
Right.
little, complete, very well preserved.
Well, that's what they found, a Siberian tiger that way up inside the Arctic also, that was fresh frozen like that.
You don't wander around in the wilderness with flowers in your mouth.
Not for long periods of time. That's right. And that's exactly right. That is a good point. Yes, sir.
They've been saying in the flood brings they do know how the ice age technically happened, but they don't know the origin, kind of like
Right.
the origin of everything. There's always a theory. So,
Right, theory. But they can't prove it.
actually, you get fresh water, you reduce the salinity in your conveyor. We actually have an oceanic conveyor that
Right.
circulates heat and has a lot to do with our atmosphere.
Right.
If you were to dump in that much fresh water, you shut the conveyor down, which means that we don't have the ability to move thermally. Thermally, we don't have the thermodynamics that we did before, so you will cool down very quickly. So when you include everything else and you put the fresh water in and produce the salinity again, you're going to freeze pretty quickly. So it goes right in.
That would, very much so. The whole salinity and sedimentary gathering in the oceans, the saltiness of the ocean continues to increase because, there's salt all over the earth, right? And as rain comes down and washes that down ultimately it washes it down into the oceans. And so they test the saltiness of the ocean. And if we are billions of years old and the waters have been there billions of years, based on current rate of salt coming into the ocean, then we should have about 3 feet of salt at the bottom of the ocean. And of course, we have nothing near that. Now, we did have one event that brought a lot in, again, the flood, but not a billion and billions of years worth. And that's actually one of the greatest evidences that the earth is much younger. Evolutionists won't even factor in a global flood. They just say it's the rate today was the same rate that it was billions of years ago. And I remember at the very beginning when we talked about this, we talked about observational science and historical science. And observational science is something that we can repeat over and over again and get the same result. Whereas historical science is you look back and you can only model, you can only presume, you can take evidences that you have today and put them together and come up with an idea. Now, what the creationists have put together for the Ice Age is much, much more scientifically sound than anything that the secularists can come up with. And they've tried, like I said earlier, and their little theories always, they fold in on themselves and they don't work. And they won't. We know. We've read the back of the book, we read the front of the book, we know, but they refuse to believe that. Well, I thought next week we'll talk about the whole ape to man thing. And how many of you ever saw in the news, you're old enough to, they finally found the missing link. Front page, we found how many times did they find it? But then, it wasn't, So is he the missing link? Now we know. Okay. It's Scott. Donnie and I actually know a couple. The dad is dead now, but they named their son Link. I was like, golly, that's just cruel. I hope he's a big fella. So, but we'll look at that next week, and we'll take some of the most popular finds, and we're just going to dissect them, and see if they're as valid as they say they're going to be. So if there's any other questions, ideas, things you want to talk about that we haven't already covered, let me know. I'm winding down now. So just let me know. Yes, ma'am.
Sort of off the thing, but you're talking about that movie Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Why do this may be a dumb question, but why do they want to make a movie about a story of the Bible, but not
A story about the Bible.
it seems like it makes sense to make it if they're not gonna say
Well, you sent me that link on Facebook, and I read that the guy who's doing it, directing, producing, whichever, he's desired to produce a movie since he was a child about environmental things, And so he came up, with this story of Noah and thought that would be the greatest avenue to use because all the vegetation's killed and it comes back, and, that it would be such a lesson for us today because we're just destroying our environment so badly with global warming as we sit here at 40 degrees and stuff in March. So in Alabama. Yes, sir.
That brings up a scary new pop culture thing that's coming on that if we had human global suicide, we would save the earth. I mean, there actually are groups that say
Global what? Global suicide. Right.
there are groups now pushing to say, hey, if we really want to save the earth, we should
Commit suicide to save the earth. Right. That is pretty sick. That's a step beyond what China is only letting you having one child. Wow. I think I had heard that actually somewhere recently. You're right. That's amazing.
Suicide bomb on Muslim religion. You first. You go first. Show me how to do it.
That's right. That's right. Yes, ma'am.
We've all taken a vote. We want Scott to go sit up front.
So Scott's going to sit up front with me from now on so I can keep an eye on him. Right now. Well, we could do that. Jackie, I think you need to take hold of your hubby there. Now how many of you have heard the deal Avery and I were talking about the unicorn in the Bible? In Job, of course, it talks about the unicorn. So what is that about? It's legend, it's urban myth and Greek mythology. But there's not only a woolly mammoth, but there's also a woolly rhinoceros. And I didn't put a picture of him on here, but he's got a really massive horn on his head, on his nose. So that could have been an ice age. Not an ice age, that could have been a unicorn. If they just find the one, that horn poking out and they don't have a lot of evidence on the body, that might have been what they call in Job speaks of as the unicorn.
There is an animal Ringling Brothers has, had, or still have it, but it was basically a goat that instead of its horns growing normally, it grew a single horn out of its head. And they would use this in their shows in the circus and say, hey, here's a unicorn.
Right.
It was just genetic mutation.
Of a goat.
Yeah, of a goat.
Now, I went to them when it had that one year. For those who listen on CD, that Ringling Brothers had a animal that was a goat with a genetic mutation where it just had one horn coming out the center instead of two. And they brought it around saying they had a real unicorn. And I saw that, but I figured it was just somehow attached. I didn't know how it had happened. So it was true genetic. I mean, huh. Basically, yeah, I see. That's interesting. That is interesting. I wondered how they did that.
Then they had the big lady in the fair that
Never mind. You go sit with Scott. In the corner. Right. All right. Any other questions on stuff we've covered? Legitimate questions. Well, I'm going to let you out of class a few minutes early since y'all have been so diligent. Hopefully they're not smoking anything. That's right. Y'all watch Scott after he leaves here and make sure. He has to stay after. You had detention, Scott. You're going to do a test. I'm going to test you on everything I talked about. All right, you want Scott to pray? All right, Scott, you pray. Pray us out. Stand up and give us a prayer. That's right. Amen. Thank you, Scott.